but I thought it might be encouraging and just to get another perspective on Jesus and how he coped with life and the world. So let's go to the Father in prayer. God, thanks so much for the time together. Thank you for your love and your mercy, your grace. Thank you that you don't treat us as our sins deserve. Thank you that you don't judge us by what you see or hear, but you judge us by our hearts. And God, I pray that we would live lives that are pleasing to you. Be with all the students that are returning and all those that are working and on campus. Pray that you keep them safe. We love you. It's in your son's name we pray. Amen. So if you would, look over in Isaiah chapter 9. And so, in my time being a Christian, I've heard about, Jesus, the church builder, and Jesus, the discipler, and, how Jesus cares for the needy and the poor. I've heard about Jesus and studying out just his convictions about his love for the Father and the church. And then, you look at all the parables and the lessons he teaches, both to his disciples and to non-Christians, to the church. But in Isaiah chapter 9, beginning in verse 6, says, "For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor." And I've not heard much about Jesus the Counselor. You drop down to verse 28 or chapter there. And verse 9. I got my scriptures confused. Let me look here. Oh, let's see here. Bear with me for a minute here. And I was looking for my other passage that talked about Jesus being a counselor, but I lost it. But anyway, so there's another description of Jesus being a counselor in Isaiah. And as I mentioned, in my time, I just haven't heard much about or teaching about Jesus the counselor. And, a counselor is someone that's trained to give guidance on a personal or social or even on psychological problems. And, one of the questions I often ask myself, and I appreciate James and Chris's lesson on Sunday, and James made a point, he made a statement about struggling the right way. And, I asked myself, okay, is my relationship with God healthy? Am I struggling properly? Because the issue isn't whether or not we struggle. We're going to fall, but God isn't concerned about us struggling as to how we struggle, and do we struggle with the right heart and mindset and attitude. And so I wanted to look at a story that we're familiar with. Turn over to Matthew in chapter 25. And preferably, I got these scriptures down right. Matthew chapter 25, and beginning in verse 14, parable of the talents. And some of us, maybe many of us, are familiar with this, but this has always struck me about this one servant's response to Jesus and in regards to this parable. So in verse 14, it says, "For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, 'Master, you delivered to me 5 talents here. I have made 5 talents more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.' And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward saying, 'Master, you delivered me 2 talents here. I have made 2 talents more.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master.' He who had received the 1 talent came forward saying, 'Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground here. You have what is yours.' But his master answered him, 'You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested with the bankers, and at my coming, I should have received what was my own interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away.' And he cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness, into that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And so, man, how's your, or rather, is your relationship with God healthy? Is my relationship with God healthy? Am I struggling properly? Bless my wife's heart. The other passage I was looking for in Isaiah 28:29 refers to Jesus being the counselor. A counselor, somebody that can guide and train us in our personal lives, how to deal with people socially, how to handle societal issues and matters. A counselor, someone that can help you with psychological problems. You know, those of us that are familiar with the story with Jesus on the boat, right? And the waves are just crashing against the boat. And the disciples are panicking and they run into the cabin or the place where Jesus is sleeping. And the Bible depicts Jesus as asleep and calm and at peace. You know, that in and of itself is a whole story on therapy, right? On how to cope with life, like the waves of life, social issues. And Jesus is there in his Zen moment. And so I have to ask myself often, man, okay, is my relationship with God healthy? Like, we know healthy relationships, and we've talked about toxicity over the last couple of weeks, and we know of unhealthy relationships. And it could be the same in our relationship with God. So here you have this story and these abilities and these talents and these efforts of time and energy are being spent. One has 5 talents and ability. He comes back and gains from God or from the master 5 more. The other one with 3 or 4 and double that. And the last one, or next to the last, is with 3 or 2. But the one who had a couple or 1, he didn't do anything. Now, the previous people, right? What does the master say? Here's a healthy perspective, or here's a healthy relationship with God. They went out, they gave all their talents, their efforts, in whatever it was they were doing, their work, being a parent, whatever the case may be, their career, their job, their vocation. And the master said, what? Well done, good and faithful. Come and enjoy your master. Like that's a healthy relationship, isn't it? Like good and well done, being faithful, like, man, God, am I going to have enough if I give my all to you in my career, in my vocation, as a parent, with all that you've blessed me with, my talents, my abilities? Am I faithful that you will replenish me? You will meet my needs. You will provide for me. You will supply me with whatever it is because I'm giving it all to you. And he says, absolutely. You've been so faithful. Good and well done. Come and enjoy your master. And I don't think going out and expending the talents and energy and time is necessarily easy, right? We've all been blessed with talents and abilities and capabilities and energy that God gives us. Before some of you came on, I was talking with Jerome, and he was just talking about needing to get a nap. And I told him naps are wonderful. I love naps. Naps, right? He'll give us what we need when we give our all to him, no matter what it is that we do. And he says, because you're so faithful, Jerome, you gave your all because they're back. Go on and take a nap. And so that's a healthy relationship. That's struggling the right way. But then there's this last person. And he says, you know what, Master, I know you're a hard man. And I knew I needed to save that energy. I needed not to expend that 1 or 2 talents you give me. And so I dug it in the ground and preserved it. Self-preservation. And what does the master say? Oh, you did. That's what you thought of our relationship, that I'm a hard man. And so the master says, well, why didn't you invest it then in the bank? And the master's response is quite piercing, to say the least. His relationship with the master, and sometimes our relationship with God, is not healthy, is it? Like it'd be easy for you and I to think, man, God, you're a hard man. Right? All that's going on in the last nearly 2 years. Right? All the politics, all the bickering, all the fight for social justice, all the mask and vaccines and just all the variants, all that's going on. I know you're a hard man, God. And so I'm not going to really expend myself in this climate because I know that's how you are. And not a healthy relationship. His perspective was not one of faithfulness and joy. He even said, not only are you hard, but I'm afraid of you. And when you pull that fear card out, that is a huge excuse card to play, right? Like whenever somebody says they're afraid about anything or a circumstance or a situation, man, our natural tendency is to pull up. Oh, you're afraid? Oh, okay. But that wasn't the master's response. Okay. I'm sorry. I don't want you to be afraid. You did good reserving yourself, finding self-preservation, putting your talent that I gave you into the hole. You did good. Don't worry about investing it. You did good. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be hard, and I certainly don't want you to be afraid. Man, his perspective, his relationship with the master, our relationship with God can sometimes not be healthy. When we make up God to be hard and that we're afraid of him, we're using that as an excuse not to give our all to him in whatever it is he calls us to. When we know from Hebrews, right, Jesus died to destroy fear. I mean, that was the whole point of the cross. You can kill me and you can put me in the grave, but I will rise from the dead. And so his talents, his abilities, giving his very best, any kind of resource that was given to him from the master, time, the ability, energy to do what he was doing, became an excuse to preserve himself rather than to be self-sacrificed. And yet the previous gentlemen, they laid it all out there, right? And God doubled what they had. Really, our perspective on our relationship with God has so much to do with our attitude, doesn't it? I mean, right? I mean, you've been in those situations where, you just wake up on the right side of the bed, right? And it's just like, you had a great time with God and everything's just going all right. You hit all the lights going to work. Man, you went in to get your coffee and there was no line and they had it ready for you because you're a regular. And you found your parking space like immediately, and it was very close to where you had to go into work. And you walk into work, right? And different people got different feelings and attitudes for the day. And you say, oh, it'll work out. It's going to be okay. What can I pray for you for? And they say, man, you're really chipper today. And you're really happy today. And they say, man, what went on with you between home and getting here? And you said, nothing. So nothing happened. No, not anything in particular. You just thankful and faithful and enjoying your relationship with God. Attitude is everything, right? And as a result, when our relationship with God is healthy, we cope in healthy ways, don't we? Right? Like we were teasing, some of you may not have heard, but we were talking about Abby and Taj, and Abby and Taj are married, and newlyweds, and enjoying life. And Jordan said, oh, I think I want to move into your apartment complex. And not only do I want to move in there, I don't want to be on the floor below or 2 floors below or 3 floors above. I want to find somewhere right next door, right? And we talked about how Jordan, don't wear out your welcome now. Because Jordan's cooking his food and bring it on by and sit down and have dinner with him. But you know, it's interesting. When our attitude is right, when we're coping in a healthy way, when we're going to the wonderful counselor, man, we know how to have boundaries. And so I was telling Jordan now, you know, at some point, Taj and Abby gonna draw some boundaries with you. So don't be offended. Right? We gotta have a healthy relationship. So we cope healthy. We don't avoid situations and problems. We don't give in to them. I mean, that's what happened with the last person, right? He just surrendered and said, man, life's too hard. It's too difficult. God, you're too hard. You're too tough. I'm afraid of you. So I'm just going to surrender. I'm not going to give my all to you. I'm not going to give you all my energies, all my abilities, all my talents, because I'm just going to surrender. And that's not healthy coping. Or we just get angry. More times than not, we don't wake up on the right side of the bed. We're just mad. Like when you do wake up feeling faithful and good and well done Christian, like that's a caveat. That's an outlier. Most of the time it's, and on the extreme it's, we just fight life, we fight, and our relationship with God, we're not struggling in a healthy way. And it's interesting, Jesus is the wonderful counselor, right? So we're talking about personal needs. We're talking about the wonderful counselor can provide for societal issues, dealing with social norms. And he can also give psychological counseling. You say, well, what do you mean by that, Anton? Well, man, if we're trusting, if we're faithful, right, we'll take our medication. We'll be compliant. We'll go in to see our doctors because he's the wonderful counselor, because he knows that you're stepping out there on faith to face the day. He's not going to let us down. And so as a result, the wonderful counselor, man, you're joyful. You're faithful. He says, come on in. He's going to take care of you psychologically, mentally, emotionally, physically, because he's the wonderful counselor. He is the counselor. He is the psychiatrist. He is the therapist. He is the doctor. You know, we've heard a lot about Luke being a doctor. There was no doctor like Jesus. You know, the Bible tells us, and we've read it often, right, that we are to train ourselves to be godly, or to make sure our relationship with God is healthy. If we're willing to do that, the wonderful counselor is going to teach us how. He's going to teach us how to cope, particularly during these times. And, you know, we talked about how coming out of 2020, right, that 2021, the only thing that was going to change was the number. And some of us were thinking, oh no, it's over. We're going to get back to normal. And here we are, what, a couple of weeks from the last quarter? And we're going into 2022. But if we're willing to train ourselves to be godly, to go to the counselor that can help us personally and socially and psychologically and give us guidance and let him train us, we're going to be okay. We're going to learn how to cope. We're going to learn how to face life. Even when it's difficult, even when there's suffering, because he's just not the counselor, right? He's the wonderful counselor. Wonderful, lovely, beautiful, excellent, praiseworthy. You ever been to a doctor that had a horrible bedside manner? Excellent doctor, like knows his stuff, diagnose you, get your x-rays, knows what to give you, how to take care of you, but he is horrible with his bedside manner. Just blunt, direct, not thinking about your, and for those of us that are built like that, you're like, I got to find another doctor. Because for whatever his gifts are from his career and his craft, like it's not worth the emotional exhaustion of going there. Jesus is the wonderful counselor, empathetic, sympathetic, sensitive, caring, kind, aware. That's what we have. But we've got to be willing to train ourselves, and we've got to be willing to let him guide us. Even when it's difficult, right? Like you get an injury, you go to a doctor, the doctor tells you to do this to recover. But in the meanwhile, until you get back to 100%, he tells you how to get back there. That's Jesus. I don't know what 100% or what normal will be again. I don't even know that what we knew as normal will ever come back. But I know the wonderful counselor can guide and train us how to cope in a healthy way, in a new norm. Because if you're still waiting on the next year to go back to what you considered normal, I mean, what does the Bible tell us? Anybody who puts their hands to the plow and look back, like, are we looking back at 2019? $2,000? I had some childhood friends call me. We're going to have a reunion in October. I've known my friends for nearly 40 to 50 years. I haven't seen some of them in that long. And I can't wait to see them. But if I'm looking back to the 70s and 80s, or the 60s or 50s, the wonderful counselor, guys, there is nothing new under the sun. Nothing. He's got us. He's the wonderful counselor. So, man, I encourage us, man, look at the parable of talents. You know, are we digging our capabilities and talents and energies into the ground because God, I won't say you're hard, but I'm not afraid of you, but I'm not exactly on that joyful end and like, I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to sell out for you. Because that's what we can have. No matter what the decade, the time period, you go back, study The Wonderful Counselor. You'll find a pandemic. You'll find a famine. You'll find race issues, Gentiles, Jews. You'll find politics. You'll find all that. Guys, I love you. Look forward to seeing you soon. And be sure to encourage Kent and those that will be serving, and thank the Deckers for using their lovely clubhouse, and be sure to stay safe.